Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the latest updates of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the evening of December 26, 2023 in the United States, the morning of December 27, 2023 in the Middle East. While I usually focus on the last 24 hours, since I was not here yesterday, I'm also going to bring the highlights from the last 48 hours. Starting with the hostage situation, responding to the Egyptian proposal to officially end the war, have a complete release of hostages, Palestinian prisoners, and a technocratic government that will assume control of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad officially rejected the Egyptian proposal, citing the requirement to dismantle Hamas's government in the Gaza Strip as the main reason. Despite this, Egyptian sources quoted today in Al-Kahara al-Akhbariya stated that the proposal was just an initial one and there's going to be further refinement in order to get both sides to agree to it, and that neither side has responded yet. Again, this contradicts what Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad officially said. In other news relating to the Israeli proposal to Qatar, that it is still waiting for a response from the different Palestinian organizations, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine stated today that Israel's proposal includes the release of Marwan Barghouti, who is one of the most prominent members of Fatah and who has been cited many times as a potential successor of Mahmoud Abbas, and Ahmed Sadat, who is the leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. This is significant because previously, at the end of the last round of hostage exchange, Hamas said in the next round they're going to demand the release of the most high-profile prisoners, specifically named these two. If, in fact, the Israeli proposal that it gave to Qatar does include the release of those two, that signifies that Israel is recognizing that it is going to have to release them in order to secure more hostage exchange, and this may be significant later on. Other news, President Biden today spoke with Qatari Prime Minister Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. According to the reports, they spoke about the next stage of a potential hostage exchange and a truce between the sides. Moving on to the fighting within the Gaza Strip. There were continuous rockets and mortars that were sent from the Gaza Strip, targeting primarily the southern parts of Israel. There were barrages towards Sderot, as well as areas surrounding the Gaza Strip, Ivim near Am and Saad, as well as other barrages towards Ashkelon. Regarding the ongoing fighting within the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, there was substantial IDF activity reported in the Darj Tufah area. This is one of the areas surrounding Gaza City. These include major armored divisions and engineering units that are operating within the city, and a lot of face-to-face gun battles that are reported between the IDF and different Hamas operatives still in the area. According to the IDF, over 10 tunnel entrances have been destroyed and substantial weaponry was uncovered. The IDF also reported that it assassinated several prominent Hamas members in Darj Tufah, although no names were given. Other news, in Jabalia refugee camp, there's ongoing fighting, despite the fact that the IDF stated that it has taken over operationally taken over the refugee camp. There's still reported ongoing fighting with different Hamas operatives in the area. The substantial expansion in the last 24 hours has been in the central parts of the Gaza Strip. In the El Bureij refugee camp, the IDF reported launching a ground campaign into the refugee camp with the aim of engaging Hamas's central brigades. These are the brigades that are primarily located in the El Bureij refugee camp, Al Nusrat refugee camp, Al Maghazi refugee camp, and Deir el-Balach. So as I stated several days ago, after the IDF took over the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, it did not actually progress further down south directly. The invasion of the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, i.e. Han Yunis, happened from the east of Israel. In the meantime, there's the central parts of the Gaza Strip, these strongholds, which are known to be very, very fierce Hamas strongholds. There's at least 4 different Hamas brigades located in these areas. In the last several days, the IDF started calling upon civilians to evacuate from these areas, signaling that there is going to be a ground invasion coming. Since this morning, there was substantial aerial bombing reported in the Deir el-Balach area, and specifically in El Bureij, and specific fire belt bombings were also seen in the refugee camps. And today, the IDF announced it has launched its ground invasion, specifically citing units that took over the Zaytun areas and the Sajaiya areas that have moved into the areas of El Bureij. So we're going to see substantial expansion of the confrontations in the coming days. Moving down south towards Han Yunis, the IDF reported that Dr. Hamisa Najjar, who's a member of Hamas's legislative council, was killed in a bombing in his home in Han Yunis. According to Palestinian sources, along with him was also killed his wife, 2 of his children, and several grandchildren. Other news related to Han Yunis, local reports are stating that there was a targeted attack against a government car belonging to the water district of Hamas. According to the reports, 3 different people were killed and 1 was injured. It is unclear what the target is. However, this fits the profile of targeted assassinations that the IDF often carries out. Most of the bombings do not target specific cars, so likely we will hear tomorrow or the next day who this bombing was targeting. Other news are substantial IDF bombings in the area. Over 100 bombings were reported throughout the Gaza Strip. Regarding Rafah, there's no specific reports of fighting that was going on. However, according to a leak from Cabinet, Defense Minister Gallant in Israel today stated that currently there's no plan to take over Rafah or the Philadelphia line. The Philadelphia line is that crossing between the borderline between Rafah and Egypt. So despite leaks there was several days ago from different Gazan sources saying that Israel is planning to take over the border and has instructed Egyptian sources and Egyptian officials to leave the area, According to at least the leak from Israeli cabinet, there is no such plan at this time. Other news relating to the Gaza Strip, there is substantial disagreement being reported within Israel's war cabinet. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant both advocating that barring any unforeseen developments, the intensive phase of the fighting, i.e. the current phase that involves both aerial bombings and continued ground invasions of different areas, should continue at least till the end of January. While others, specifically Minister Gantz and Eisenkot, both think that the IDF should already move to the next phase the United States is demanding, i.e. the low-intensity phase, citing that this will enable the IDF not to spread too thin and also will allow for a majority of civilian population, i.e. Palestinian civilians that have been uprooted from different areas, to gradually go back to the areas they were uprooted from or to relocate to different areas in order to facilitate the different IDF operations. According to different sources, the IDF supports the approach of continuing the current phase of the fighting at least till the end of January, however, it is making operational plans should the political establishment think otherwise. Regarding casualties, in the last 24 hours, 4 IDF soldiers died. 3 of these were killed in battles. 1 of these died from injuries that sustained over a week ago. This brings the total number of IDF soldiers that were killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 164. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip, 241 Palestinians were killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians who were killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 20,915, and 54,918 are reported injured. And in addition to this, there are upwards of 8,000, 10,000 people who are still reported likely buried under the rubble. Regarding the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, telecommunications in the Gaza Strip crashed again today. Reports suggest that this is not due to an IDF operation specifically targeting telecommunications, but rather that due to the bombings, different wires and communications lines were knocked out. This is unconfirmed at this time. This report is only several hours old. Other news, one of the 2 main water lines supplying water to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, specifically the ones near Han Yunis and Bani Suheila, stopped functioning today as a result of bombings as well. There is no report about the other water line that is also in the area very close. Right now, one of the water lines is reported to have stopped functioning. There is no report given by any of the agencies, neither the IDF, Palestinian Red Crescent, or the United Nations, regarding the entrance of humanitarian aid trucks. This could be as a result of the season between Christmas and New Year's. There's a lot less reporters working on the ground, a lot less press conferences. Possibly, right now, no report for how many trucks entered carrying food, water, or medical supplies, or fuel trucks. Moving on to the West Bank, so substantial IDF activity reported in the Al-Fawar refugee camp. This is in the area of Hebron, as well as in the Beit Omar area in Hebron, and the Nur Shams refugee camp in Tulkarem. According to reports in the Nur Shams, this is a major operation. Weapons labs were destroyed, and a lot of weaponry was confiscated. Confrontations are reported, and there's also reports that the operation in Nur Shams has air support of the IDF, and that drone attacks were seen in the area. Other activities throughout the West Bank reported in Kafin, Jayus, Alar, Atil, as well as the Sayada refugee camp. 6 Palestinians are reported killed in the last 24 hours in the West Bank. 2 of these are in Al-Fawar, while 4, unconfirmed, are in Nur Shams. 33 Palestinians are reported arrested throughout the West Bank. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel. Yesterday it was reported that Razi Mousavi, who was a prominent leader in the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the organization's representative in Syria, was assassinated. Mousavi was a commander of Iranians' weapons trafficking through Syria, i.e. he was in charge of virtually all the weapons that were transferring from Iran through Syria to Hezbollah and to other militias. He's also reported to be a very close associate of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Iranian ambassador in Syria stated that Mousavi was killed in a missile attack in his home. Iranian president threatened retaliations against Israel, and so did Iranian foreign minister. Israel made no comment, did not take responsibility for this, did not say anything about this, only said that it is operating against all its enemies in the region. Today, from southern Lebanon, there were substantial rockets and missiles launched. These targeted the areas of Dovev, Hardov, where 6 missiles were reported targeting an IDF outpost. Shomra and different mortars were sent towards outposts in Livneh as well. A specific incident is reported in Ikrit, in the western Galilee, where an anti-tank missile was launched from Lebanon towards a famous church in the area. This injured 1 civilian who was at the church for Christmas. However, during the IDF attempt to come and rescue him, 9 soldiers were also injured in continued gun battles and different anti-tank missiles that were being launched towards the area. According to reports, the IDF managed to target where the missiles were being launched from, and the area was attacked from the sky, and those who were launching the missiles were killed. Hezbollah also claimed responsibility for 7 different border incidents, stating that it also fired Burkan missiles towards IDF outposts. This is a substantially heavier missile than Hezbollah usually fires. It stated that it fired at least 1 of those towards the IDF outpost. Regarding IDF retaliations, IDF targeted a wide range of Hezbollah operations throughout southern Lebanon, specifically targeting infrastructure, command centers, as well as launching sites. Specific retaliations are noted in Yarin and Binjbel with substantial artillery activity as well. Israel. 5 people reported injured in these different retaliations. Hezbollah also fired surface-to-air missiles against the IDF warplanes. However, these missed. Hezbollah is reporting that 2 of its operatives were killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of operatives Hezbollah is stating were killed since the war began to 128. There's also reports that IDF warplanes were seen circling around vast areas of Lebanon, specifically in Beirut as well. In other news, the Voice of Lebanon news agency reported that 2 cars were reportedly hit by Israeli missiles in the El Khalila and El Ma'aliyah areas of Tzor. The report stated that 3 people were killed. Again, like in Han Yunis, it is unknown what the target was. However, this fits the profile of a targeted assassination the IDF carries out. Likely we'll hear about this in the coming days. Also a report that came in moments before recording this. There's a report in Syria that Israel carried out 2 more attacks in Damascus and Quneitra area. Unknown what those targets are at this time. Moving on to some of the regional developments, yesterday it was reported that 3 U.S. soldiers were injured in a militia attack against a U.S. base in Iraq. The U.S. also stated they carried out bombings against Hezbollah Iraq brigades and several people were killed. Today, moving on to other regional developments, there was an attack drone that was intercepted above Sinai, presumably it was making its way towards Israel, and another hostile air target was reportedly intercepted by the IDF in the Red Sea. Following this, Houthi spokesperson Yahya Saria stated that the Houthis launched several drones towards Israel and that they successfully also targeted a ship in the Red Sea that was destined towards Israel with missiles after the ship did not adhere to their calls. This was confirmed by UK MTO that stated that a ship was hit with missiles, however that the entire crew is okay and the ship was not badly damaged. Other news, the U.S. also reported today that within 10 hours, U.S. air and sea vessels intercepted 12 different attack drones, 3 maritime ballistic missiles, and 2 cruise missiles, all that were launched from the Houthis towards different maritime targets in the Red Sea. So this is the U.S. stating that its coalition to secure the Red Sea passage is fully functional and is intercepting all these Houthi attacks. However, this also states that the Houthis are upping their game, so to speak, as these are much more attacks reported in the last 24 hours than have been since the war began. Moving on to some of the political and general trends, Defense Minister of Israel Alon today stated that the United States may withhold aid and supplies to Israel, quoting, not just for technical reasons. This follows conversations he had with Secretary of State Blinken and likely relates to the U.S. pressure on Israel to move on to the next phase of the war and to come up with their day-after plan that will match what the United States thinks the day-after plan should be. He stated that the U.S. may start withholding aid and supplies to Israel, not only for technical reasons. This is U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan today spoke with Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs and one of Netanyahu's closest confidants, Ron Dermer. The two reportedly discussed the next phase of the war and hostage release. Political news. There was a conversation today between the president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, and the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. According to reports, the two discussed regional developments, and the president of Iran, Raisi, assured al-Sisi that the Suez Canal will not be impacted as a result of the Houthi attacks, which is a major source of concern for Egypt. It was also reported that Iran was pleased with Egypt that it did not join the U.S. coalition against the Houthis, and the two discussed also the regional developments and possibly reaffirming the ties between them that have been very, very rocky over the last 40 years. Other political news, the United Nations appointed Sigrid Kaag, who is a former deputy prime minister of Holland, to be the humanitarian coordinator of the Gaza Strip. So this is a result of the UN Security Council resolution that passed several days ago saying that it's going to set up this international body that will monitor humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip. So Sigrid Kaag has been appointed to be the humanitarian coordinator. This fell under heavy criticism in Israel as a result of the fact that she has in the past has heavily criticized Israel politically, and also that she is married to a former PLO minister, and according to Israel, she is far from being neutral in this conflict. On to speculation regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, Prime Minister Netanyahu published an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday in which he laid out 3 Israeli conditions for a peaceful future with the Gaza Strip. These included destroying Hamas, demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, and de-radicalizing the Palestinian population. The article goes on to explain why Israel will not return to the situation as it was prior to October 7th. It is not going to enable the Gaza Strip to continuously be a military threat, and goes on to explain how the educational system in the Palestinian population needs to be completely revised, why the Palestinian Authority is not an answer to this, etc., etc. Other political news. Prime Minister Netanyahu stated in a meeting with different Likud members that he is not opposed to the idea of willful immigration of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, but the problem is finding countries that would be willing to receive them. Hours later, MK Dani Danon, who's a member of the Likud, stated that several countries in Africa and Latin America have expressed willingness to receive Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, some in exchange for money. Danon also stated that the strategy is not to scare them with the amount of people who may come to their countries, and, I'm quoting, even if each country takes 10,000, 20,000 Gazans, it will be significant. Danon also emphasized that the aim is not to force Gazans to leave, but rather, again quoting, to ease the process for those who want to leave. Other news regarding speculation of the future of the Gaza Strip: a delegation of the Palestinian Authority, headed by the head of intelligence Majid Faraj, headed to Egypt to discuss the Egyptian proposal that I mentioned at the beginning of this report. According to different sources, the Palestinian Authority is very critical of the idea of a new technocratic government that Egypt is proposing, and demands that the deal regarding the end of the war revolve around the ways to end the war and hostage release, not changing the regime. Other news, the Washington Post today reported that the U.S. administration is planning to ensure ways that the Palestinian Authority could take over the Gaza Strip after the war. According to the report, the administration is heavily pressuring Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas to establish a new government with, quote-unquote, new blood that will operate under him. However, it is being very careful to not suggest that this will replace Mahmoud Abbas, but rather this will be under the auspices of the current regime, however, will start to develop a new line of leadership. According to the report, a major hurdle is Netanyahu's right-wing government and the freezing of the funds that Israel is supposed to transfer to the Palestinian Authority. However, it also mentions that one of the hurdles is the Palestinian Authority is conditioning any reforms that it would carry out on the United States presenting a clear pathway towards the establishment of a Palestinian state that will include both the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and that the Palestinian Authority is reluctant to carry out any reforms unless it is satisfied with this pathway that will be presented by the United States. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.